Hello, and welcome to a new Cardfight Vanguard overDress episode review. The last one, well, for a while actually, until like October I think, so that's kinda sad. You may notice I'm being a little quieter than usual, but hey, basically something came up and it made recording a little bit more difficult, but I think as long as I'm like this, it should be okay. You know, I mean, it stands to reason, as you can probably see in the corner. I record these very late at night. UK time zones are not on my side, huh? But yeah, I really wanted to get this episode review out anyway because it's the finale and I didn't want to wait, so let's just try this anyway, see how it goes. So, yes, this is the finale of overDress Season 1. What a journey it's been. I was gonna say like a long journey, but that's incorrect. It's not been a long journey at all. It's been quite a short one. This is the shortest season of Vanguard yet, but it's kind of a miracle that I've been able to do episode reviews of every episode, you know? Like, I've been doing these episode reviews since the reboot started, but I've bailed on every season since then because I just didn't really want to do the episode reviews. I was putting them off for one reason or another, but with overDress, I found myself really excited and wanting to talk about these episodes rather than the opposite way around. And let's go ahead and do so. So, I know right off the bat everyone's going to be wanting to hear my thoughts on a lot of different things, you know, my thoughts on the series as a whole now that it's finished, my thoughts on speculation, because there was a lot of foreshadowing in not only this episode but previous ones too, maybe some theories, that kind of thing. I'm gonna say we're not gonna see any of that, at least much of it anyway, in this video. This is still just an episode review. We will be talking about this episode in a vacuum. But don't worry, if you want to hear my thoughts of the series as a whole, maybe a review, maybe theories, all that other stuff, let me know in the comments, and of course I will be making those videos, or at least I plan to anyway. So yeah, as for what I'm going to be doing with like this channel time slot, you know, me uploading a video at this time every week, I don't know what I'm going to be doing with that, but I do like this time slot of like getting a video up around this time each week, so we'll see. Now without further ado into the episode itself. So this was again another really good episode. It definitely raised a lot of questions that season 2 will have to answer for, and that's something I want to address right off the bat. This is something I may get into in an actual proper like full series review, and that's the idea that yes, this season doesn't work in a vacuum. You know, it definitely sets up a lot of stuff and builds upon things that will happen in Season 2. A lot of my opinions of things in Season 1 are going to heavily rely on how Season 2 and 3 shake out. And I've seen this hailed as a criticism, something that people don't like about overDress, and I'm just here to say that it's fine. I don't need every season to be a complete standalone story. I'm fine with them building up things and then not actually paying them off until later seasons. Basically every show in the world does this. Especially every Western show in the world for sure. You know, and a lot of anime do it too, you know, like it was said in an interview a long time ago that the real reason overDress was split into seasons with hiatuses like this was for the sake of the animation rather than anything else, you know? It wasn't to do with the story, it was just because they wanted to get the animation as good as they could get it, and so they're spending basically, if my math works out anyway, double the amount of time on each episode, hence the hiatus. And that double the amount of time shows, you know, this series looks beautiful, especially compared to basically every other series of Vanguard. The production value is through the roof, and if that's the reason they're taking the hiatuses, then that's cool. But that's the thing, I don't think it's a story reason. You know, I definitely think that yes, we are going to get different separate arcs. I do think that Season 2 is going to be a new story arc focusing on these new villains. But at the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean that Season 1 has to wrap absolutely everything up. I do have a lot of opinions on Season 1, but I don't think that Season 1 should necessarily be viewed in a vacuum. It is part of a massive long-running series, and that should be taken into account. And I take that into account with all the other Vanguard series as well. For example, being attached to all the other series make them better. You know, that's what makes Link Joker so good, is the fact that it's paying off things that we've seen before that point in older seasons. And so that's why I'm taking that approach with overdress too. I'm not viewing overdress as any different to any other Vanguard series. So yeah, the episode itself though was really good. Basically, we began with a very long card fight, and it might be one of my favorites. It was really that good. I really loved this card fight, and I mentioned this before, I'll mention it again. To me, a fight, an action scene, or even just, a card game in an anime like this can be viewed through 2 points of views, and that is the lead up to the fight, the emotional fight, why are these characters fighting, and what built up to this moment. And then of course there's the actual technical fight, what happens during said fight. And this excelled at both measures. The actual card fight was very, very, very fun. We got to see the opposing strategies of these characters, and it worked as a card game advert because they did show off a lot of really cool cards. But also, the thing that really made this episode work so well was the battle of ideals, the reason these characters were card fighting in the way that they were, the things that led up to this fight. And I really, really liked that stuff. I love that Danji's solution was to provoke and annoy Toya, by reminding him of the things that he was missing and why it was the things that he's been doing are bad, like there's a very cool line where Danji's basically like, if only you had friends, and it does such a great job. Like his way of provoking Toya like that is really, really good. Again, I actually love that it was Danji that beat Toya rather than Yu. I feel like this episode did a lot in that regard to kind of subvert that sort of... Again, I know subvert is like a hot button word that you're not supposed to use, but whatever. Like, it does a lot to kind of misdirect you in that Yu is the protagonist of the series, but the other characters are important too. I mean, hell, the fact that the final episode was a card fight between Danji and Toya rather than, Yu fighting anyone, same with the first episode, by the way, is really, really cool, and I like that a lot. I mean, again, people have complained that, Danji is the real protagonist of the series, but if anything, that's what's so cool about the series, is the fact that more than just Yu gets focus here. I really like that Danji's gotten so much focus, and let's face it, from the things they've been foreshadowing here, it looks like he might not be getting as much focus in the future. I mean, we'll see how much, because there is that line about him moving away, and that line could either mean that he becomes more plot important because of his connection to Monet even, or it could mean he's less plot important and that he's just, saying peace out basically, and we're just not going to see him much. We'll see where they go with that. Again, I'm not going to go too deep into that kind of thing because this isn't really a theory or speculation video. We'll be getting to that in a bit. But that's the thing. I like that we're focusing on other characters other than just Yu. Obviously, Yu is going to have his time to shine. Probably in season 2 is my guess, right? Like, it's very clear and obvious that the thing they're setting up here is that up until this point, Yu and the others in general have been relying so much on Danji to come in and save the day, which he did in this episode. And so, what's going to happen when he's out of the picture and he won't be there to save the day anymore? That's very interesting. I really want to see what they go with in that regard. And yeah, the car fight was really, really good. Like, there's a lot of intentional parallels this card fight has with the very first one in episode 1 between Danji and Toya. It very much mirrors that card fight in a very similar way. Like, for example, in both card fights there's a really important moment where Toya has to draw a trigger that he needs, and in both of them he doesn't, right? And then of course the actual Sakura animation sequence is fairly similar in both of them. Well, I think it's after the card fight this time in this one, but Danji references the line of like, are we having fun yet? There's a lot of mirrors there, and again, at a later date I might do a more like comprehensive, like once I've rewatched the 2 episodes, a more like comprehensive list of like the parallels between the 2 fights, but I really liked that thematically. Another thing I really liked too was the aesthetics of this fight. You know how like Toya had the kind of blue flames which kind of represented a lot of the pressure he had on him. And then you had the blackness of the background. See, in the first episode, the background, at least during the Sakura scene, was in a big football stadium because Danji and Toya were fighting to entertain an audience. Whereas This time they were fighting in front of a pure like black background to kind of represent like the freedom and purity and like the importance of the situation, because Danji gives a fairly lengthy speech about why Team Blackout is called Team Blackout, and it is that he finds like a freedom in there just being a black void of nothing, and I really like that stuff. Of course, one thing that did kind of, I know there's a symbolism to it, right? Like, I get it, you know, like, after the card fight, which, by the way, I guess I just took too many screenshots of the card fight because it looked so nice looking, I mean, just look at it. But yeah, after the card fight, we did get a scene of this, of Toya and Danji fist fighting and then talking to each other, and that's the bit where Danji does explain about the whole darkness and the black void of nothing. And as I mentioned, something threw me off, and you can probably see it, and it's the fact that they're naked, and I get it, I know why they did it. It's very clearly a visual metaphor for the freedom thing they're going for, and I get that. Found it a little bit difficult to take it seriously though. Obviously it didn't like ruin the episode for me or anything, and I get what they're going for, and of course cultural differences play some kind of part in that as well, right? Like, this is a Japanese show, I'm a Western audience, right? So like, I'm not as used to seeing this kind of thing as maybe a Japanese fan would be. It just threw me off a little bit. I mean, again, it's not something that ruins the show. And again, I understand why it's there. In fact, I maybe even appreciate why it's there. It's just, in the heat of the moment, I found myself a little confused. Speaking of a little confused, I like this subversion, and I'm looking forward to seeing where they go with this in season 2, which is why I mentioned the importance of judging this as a first season of a show rather than a self-contained show in and of itself. And that's Danji's decision to have Toya replace not only himself but Yuyu, right? Earlier in the season, Danji announced that he was quitting Vanguard and that he wanted Yuyu to take his place, but in this episode he seems to be giving Toya that title instead. Because Toya has, well, as he mentions, nowhere left to really go. He has no friends to depend on or anything like that. And so Danji wants Toya to stay here and take his place, rather than Yuyu. And again, that's another kind of twist. We expect it to be Yuyu, and in fact, earlier on in the episode, not the episode, but earlier on in the season, Danji mentions that, you know, it should be Yuyu, but now he's changed his mind and it should be Toya, which means that during this card fight, Danji finally, or many card fights, because there's actually more than one, we just skip past the rest of them. But like, during these car fights, Danji really sees something in Toya. Maybe he feels pity for him or something like that, or some kind of untapped potential. But I really liked Toya's arc as a whole. I feel like this episode, seeing his car fight against Danji, really did justify a lot of the actions Toya had taken in the past. Obviously, doesn't necessarily forgive him. You know, like, I don't think anyone should necessarily be forgiving him for a lot of the worst things he did. But I liked that we actually got to see some motivation as to why he may have acted the way he did. Now, of course, putting him in charge of Blackout, there's going to be a lot of conflict there, right? Like, I already know for a fact that Megami's going to have a pretty big problem with that. So I'm looking forward to seeing where they go with that in Season 2. Will Toya actually step up to the plate and become the leader? Even though he's admittedly far less charismatic than Danji is, I guess we'll have to see. But that's exactly why I'm praising this, right? Because whilst I'm unsure of where things are going to go, that's a good thing, right? Like, I love that I don't know where the series is going at any given moment, you know? We could have a really important plot stuff next, or we can have an episode of characters randomly wrestling. And that's kind of the beauty of it, in my opinion. Obviously, you don't have to agree, but the unpredictable nature of this show is one of the things that really hooks me in. And, you know, finishing Season 1 with my main thought being, I need to see more, that's probably what they want from me, you know? They obviously have these plot elements and themes still going because they want people to come back after the hiatus, because let's face it, hiatuses aren't exactly frequent in Vanguard. We've had them a couple times in the past, but not very often, and so now that the hiatuses are going to become a regular thing, they're going to need to make sure that the seasons hold enough of an impact that you're still excited to see more even after such a lengthy hiatus. And so I think this was a really smart way to do it. So yeah, that's honestly this. I guess this ended up being a fairly short one. Mainly because I don't want to stable too much, because I want to wait until I can talk about the series as a whole, maybe rewatch the episode a few more times, that kind of thing. Because obviously I have my theories. This thing from the opening, I guess, ended up being a new team banner for, I'm assuming, Blackout. So that's really cool. And then there's Donji Glasses. I own a pair of those. I don't know if I mentioned this in a video before, but I actually do own those glasses. In the episode where we like show the backstory of Megami giving those glasses to Danji, like I think it was like the day after that episode aired, I just went out and bought the closest pair of glasses I could find to it. So I think that's really funny. And then yes, okay, so the new villain faction, we're going to talk about them a little bit, but not too much, because of course that's for another video. So yes, these card sleeves that Zakuza drew in a previous episode are the card sleeves that these villains are using. I'm gonna call them Daybreak because of the, you know, I'm gonna call them Daybreak because of a couple of episodes ago. I don't know if that's the name this villain team is going by, I can't remember off the top of my head, but until we get any confirmation or whatever, I'm just going to call them Daybreak for the sake of ease, so that I have something to call them. So yes, these are the Daybreak sleeves, and what was interesting is that, yes, there was a really big emphasis placed in a previous episode about how all the villains were going around using these sleeves, but Toya wasn't, and I really am interested to see the explanation for that, because obviously it's very intentional, right? Like, they wouldn't miss something that big. And we get to see more characters from this villain faction. We get the confirmation that not only is Haruka a member of Daybreak, but she's a villain, assuming, you know, these sleeves are the Daybreak sleeves, which I'm pretty sure they are. And so Daybreak are the villains, and she is one of them, and that's really cool. You know, like, it's cool to see a Kagame anime have a villain who looks like this in terms of character design, because that's a very unusual character design for like a villain. You know, when I first saw her design, I wasn't expecting her to be a card fighter at all, let alone one of the main villains for potentially season 2. And of course we got Monet. Like I said, I have a lot to say about this character, but I'm not going to say anything yet because this is like a whole video on its own. But whilst I didn't get a screenshot of it, I can promise you that she was also using the Daybreak sleeves. And one thing I will leave you out on before we kind of do the ramp up section is, notice the color of her hair. Looks pretty similar to Danji's hair color is all I'm saying. And yes, she did have the other half of Danji's charm. That raises a lot of questions. So yeah, I'm looking forward to finding out where that goes, and of course we'll have a whole video about it in the future. So be sure to like, comment, subscribe. I know I've been shelling my channel enough by teasing future videos and stuff in this video, but be sure to subscribe so that you can see those future videos. Obviously I plan on doing reviews of season 2 and videos leading up to that as well, so those will be coming pretty soon, so be sure to keep an eye on that. Be sure to like the video and comment with your thoughts on the episode and also the season as a whole, and even just your theories for the future and that kind of thing. Anything relevant that you want to talk about in the comments, feel free to. So I'll see you later with some more videos in future, and remember, for every statement, there's always an asterisk. See ya.